What if you could take that risk, make that change, reach that goal, live your best life? Welcome to another episode of the What If You Could podcast, where we get together with amazing experts and everyday people who share challenges, encourage healing, and explore the possibilities that life has to offer. I'm your host, Gary Scott, and I'm excited that you're along for the ride. Welcome back to episode 2 of the interview with Mark Johnson, author of the book Scars and Strife. And in this episode, Mark talks about the triggers and the suffering of veterans that come home with PTSD. The other thing that kind of struck me was the triggers that happen with people suffering
PTSD.
PTSD. I mean, I do grief counseling from the suffering, the grief of losing my wife, and working with people, and I see triggers in the grief of
Oh,
people who've lost, a
oh.
loved one, and it just made me think of that. Those triggers are a bitch, man.
Well, for people with post-traumatic stress disorder, sometimes they're just kind of nondescript things, but your mind has associated them with some trauma that's horrible. I mean, I've had vets who, they saw their buddy get blown up, and they were at the time they were smelling exhaust, so exhaust was like a trigger, and they'd have flashbacks. I don't know, sometimes I don't think a lot of people understand when they hear PTSD, flashbacks are real. I mean, these people they will sit there, they'll smell exhaust, and next thing you know, they're standing on some asphalt over in Fallujah. Uh, I had a veteran in my court who, when he drove from Riverside to Pomona, you're thinking probably a 20-minute, half-hour drive. It would take him 4 hours because bridges he couldn't drive under a bridge without going having a total panic attack because they're over in a war zone. It's a point of vulnerability if you're on a convoy and you drive under a bridge. So he would take these long, convoluted routes to get there. But I mean, and a lot of times these guys they don't even know they got a problem, believe it or not. It has become normal for them. But I really loved how you're spreading the word, Gary. That's just so important.
Well, yeah, and that's the other thing that hit me is I'm trying to work with the grief counseling and help people. I mean, I've got a good friend of mine who we were doing a podcast called Grief Pie, and it just took him down too dark of a hole, and we had to stop doing it. And I realized that, wow, I know it's 10 years out for me, but shit, I'll just be sitting there and something will come up and I'll just start crying. I mean, just start bawling. I'm like, what the hell? I'll be looking around. It wasn't like a song. It wasn't anything. It's just like something will make me think of my past wife. I'll just freak start bawling.
Probably was something you say. Sometimes you don't even know that you've seen something. Your mind saw it though, but you're talking to people, and yeah, no, it's I can think of me with trauma and grief. Sometimes it's like you don't even want. I'm at least the type I don't even want to admit I've had it, even though I did have some issues in the military, and I do have a PTSD diagnosis through the VA. But my choice very often was to turn to alcohol. That's the
Yeah.
worst you could do. I mean, it's funny. It's like I'm just sorry people laugh, but
Well,
all right,
that's why I
I
loved your
don't
comment
drink.
about selling the body parts on the black
Oh,
market. You're like, well, shit,
yeah,
I'm
yeah.
gonna
It's
need
like
this
they're not going to want my liver, but yeah, it's certainly taken a beating over the years. I don't drink now, and
crap.
actually I had a
You
blood
know,
test.
because I was thinking about that when Randy was pulled over by the cop, and
Yeah,
it's just the cop's like, dude, I've been watching you forever. What's your deal? And he's like, that box up there. He's like,
yeah.
what are you talking about? He's like, dude, that box, I'm not going past it. And he's in like San Diego or something, right? And he's just
Well,
having this freaking flashback of he just can't drive by that box in San Diego. And the cop's like, dude, you got to move. It
the
was
problem is, yeah, these are skills that actually have meaning over in a war zone. but because a box could very well be a IED. But yeah, they had meaning over there, but now we're over here. He's in San Diego, and they don't have any use anymore. But the problem is they don't go away.
Yeah.
And yeah, that I actually thought that I put some funny parts in there. I have trouble not finding funny stuff in everything, even. But yeah, it's obviously a serious message, I think, and I tried to describe to people what some vets go through. I mean, they're like living in hell, and
But you know
I
what,
can
Mark?
tell.
You have to use humor. Because if that book didn't have different uh, outlets, different valves or whatever to offset some of the shit
Yeah,
you just read, like you're gonna put it down, and I mean, it's wicked. I mean, you went deep with a lot of shit these guys go through and what goes on over there, and I think adding those little bouts of humor in there here and there are you had to. You
yeah.
had to, and that's what was so great about the book because it just takes you on that roller coaster of different emotions, and I just that's what kept getting me. I loved it. How long did it take you to write this book?
I started writing that in 2017, and I had an agent. Uh, Let me see. It finally was getting sent out in 2022, and then my agent and I kind of had a falling out, so I ended up publishing it through a company called Kohler Books. They're like great on everything except they don't market for you and for anything on earth. Marketing is everything, but they came up with that. I will say I when they sent me this, there were six cover choices, but this was the clear. I thought the cover was just
It's
uh,
awesome. It's
awesome,
freaking
awesome. There's the word
awesome.
I'm looking for.
No,
Yeah.
it is. When I you first were talking about it, and then I went on to Amazon and got it, I'm like, holy shit! I don't care what the book's like. That's badass cover right there. And then your friend Kim helped you with the Scars and Strife.
Oh, yeah. There's a lovely lady named. In fact, my wife is Kim. She
Yeah,
helped me always. She's always been there for me. But there's a woman named Kim Antonio. I uh that what was it called? Pain lines, trigger cure, wounded warrior, and it's like none of the names. It was getting sent out under the name Trigger Cure for hopefully for a publishing company to pick
triggered,
it up, and then
triggered. Okay,
Trigger
yeah,
Cure. I never liked that. My agent came up with it. Yeah, yeah. But and then there's this lady Kim Antonio. She lives out in Phoenix, and she's an amazing editor. I tell you, she's reasonable and she edits my stuff. And and sometimes it's just great having a real pro look at it and tell you what they think. But she came up with the name. That my big regret. I did a big thanks for her on Facebook, but my big regret was by the time I thought of, hey, I had to put some thanks to Kim in here, that everything was already kind of locked down on the number of pages. But oh yeah, she came up with a great name,
that's
Scars and Strife.
that's a great name. That's a great because it's so freaking locked into the book.
Yeah,
Because that dude had not only physical scars, which he
yeah,
had some crazy physical scars, but mental scars too. And
yeah,
strife of that he went through. So no, she knocked it out of the park with that title for sure,
yeah.
for sure. So what do you do with your charities? And I mean, what aren't we doing? Why aren't we helping our veterans? Why are we freaking helping everyone on the freaking planet but our veterans? What can we do better?
Ah, I am very leery about. I don't like slamming the VA up in Loma Linda because they did a fantastic job from our court. What do we need to do better? That's something I should have a quick answer for that. I know a ton of charities that work with these people, that work with vets. Uh, you know, One thing I do think has always struck me as a problem is there's always a lack of coordination between all these charities. Everybody wants to do stuff for veterans, but getting them all together, sometimes because I'm pretty dialed in with all the charities in the area, and suddenly I'll be up there. at some event, and here's somebody getting an award who's got like a dolphin charity. I seriously said I've seen these dolphin charities that vets swim with dolphins, and
Yeah.
it heals their post-traumatic stress disorder. And coordination is important. I mean, they do these stand downs that gets everybody together, but and this is something that I know you're not supposed to say, but I actually think at least the local VA for me is doing a pretty good job for our vets. I can tell you, I use their services a lot. I go up for my appointments up in Loma Linda. I never wait more than about 5 minutes. I'm always they get me in, they stay on top of stuff. So, I mean, I tell you, if you want to know what really, if we don't want so many vets, we need to quit getting stuck into these petty these wars that last forever. And the problem is you got an increasingly and that's my answer. I just you got an increasingly smaller and smaller percentage of America that is serving. Some of the you know this my character Randy had 13 combat tours. Some people will say, oh, that's too many. I had a vet in front of me. He was a Marine Corps veteran. He had 12 combat tours. And I mean, what's wrong with this picture? Talk about not spreading the wealth. I mean, we're sending these guys repeatedly back and forth, and then we wonder why their marriages all fall apart, why they end up with kids who don't even know who they are, and then they start drinking. I mean, I've seen the path so many times. You know, people will say, like with things like alcohol and drugs, just yeah, just put it down. But it's not that easy. And the thing about like them is they work. They actually work. Some vet is really depressed. He has about 3, 4 drinks or uses some methamphetamine. He's feeling a hell of a lot better. The problem is that obviously we know it true that path of addiction gets worse and worse, and after a while they need these things just to feel normal, not good anymore. And but oh
Well, I think we're numbing the pain when we need to expose that pain. Uh, and like, not to share too much of the book, but I mean, Randy found his soul confessor. Randy found something, you know what I mean, that he can actually relate to, that he felt related to him.
fine saying it was the cougar, but I felt like
Uh,
he had the cougar. Well, I tell you, I can think of plenty of animals. I have dogs I've had in my life, as I sure as hell would rather talk to them than a lot of people I worked with on the bench. Uh, and I was able to. I can think of times in my life I've been going through trauma. I was able to talk to my dogs better. They were way better listeners, and then they helped.
Yeah,
Well,
we had a little ranch,
Randy
and
picked the
we had
cougar.
horses and goats and chickens and
Yeah,
dogs and cats and the whole kit and caboodle. But I'll tell you that my sole confessor was my goats. I'd go out there, they fucking loved me like they loved me like nobody, and we'd sit there on the ground. I'd sit there in the dirt. They'd cuddle around me, and I'd
yeah.
sit there drinking a beer, looking at the sky, and go, "Man, I'm glad you guys are here." Because a lot of times animals, they sense what you're going through.
Oh,
When I was lost my wife and I was really going through some
yeah.
shit. I had two golden retrievers. They'd come up. Jeter would put his head on my lap. He'd look up at
Yeah.
me. He knew when I needed someone to be there, because no one was.
Well, I'm sorry about that. That's rough. I horses are very often great therapists for veterans with PTSD. And so somebody explained it to me. There's a lady out, in fact, you had to interview her, Robin Kilcoyne. She runs Queen of Hearts Riding, but she's got a lot of vets. And she was explaining to me how horses are naturally a prey animal. So they're very attentive to like creatures around them, the body language. And so when we would send vets over there for therapy and to clean the stalls, uh, some of them who had really anxious from post-traumatic stress disorder, the horses ran every time. They just picked up on those vibes. And sometimes the real victory was when this guy was able to come up and brush the horse. But they had to learn to moderate. These vets had to learn to moderate their own behavior, and I'm a firm believer. What's that old thing, like fake it till you make it, or sometimes that's like what they say in AA. But they almost had to mimic trying to be relaxed and deep breathing and everything. And somehow it's funny, the more they did it, the more they started to do it without even trying. So, but the horses did that. And I bet you that dolphin therapy that guy was running out there, dogs, most definitely. They're miracle workers with our veterans.
Yeah, my buddy who is a Marine, who was doing the podcast with me, he has a service dog now,
Yeah,
who helps him with everything. I mean, if that dog's not with him, I mean, he literally doesn't go anywhere without that dog. It's his lifeline, you know. He needs that. But we have something out here called the Pegasus Academy, which is really cool, which works with disabled children. And the horses just know. They're so gentle. I mean, you know, that horse knows to get low, help that kid get on, be gentle, you know, don't go taking off, don't go to do something stupid, because he knows that horse just knows that kid on him is disabled or has some disability. The horses are just so tuned in with that. It's amazing. You know, my wife is a scuba instructor, and we run into a number of different organizations that work with veterans, and take them out diving, you know, especially amputees. They work
yeah.
with a lot of amputees,
Oh, God
get
bless
them
you.
scuba diving. And because their bodies are just so messed up, you know, being in the water in that no, you know, zero gravity atmosphere just takes all the pressure off they don't hurt when they're in the water, you know,
Yeah,
takes them down there diving and stuff like that. So I think the more things like that we can do,
yeah.
for our veterans. But you're right. I mean, these wars are just such bullshit. I mean, it seems like the not to get political, but the military industrial complex, man, they just freaking love spending dough. They just, I mean, we spend $1 trillion a year and we still can't get shit done. It's like,
No, I tell you, I would also blame the American people somewhat, uh, because there's in the book Generation Kill, which is a great book by Evan Wright. He did an afterword in it, and there was a scene in there where one of these Marines, they were driving through a town, and everyone was opening up on him. He's up on the machine gun on top of the Humvee, firing constantly, and he made a comment that it felt like Grand Theft Auto, that playing that video game. And a lot of people jumped on that to say, oh, that's like these kids, it's just all a video game to them. And Wright said the analysis had it backwards, that it's the American people who it's only a video game to. They don't realize how fine these men and women are, but I think he put a warning, we misuse them at our peril, because I do. I think our vets are the finest Americans. And I'm looking at that photo back there behind you. Is that your boy? I see a guy
oh
holding.
yeah, that's him in Jordan.
Oh,
That's him with his dog. He's canine, and so
holy smokes!
he's got his dog on his.
I mean, these guys.
So yeah, so
These are the best.
yeah,
These.
that's Zach, and he's in Jordan, and there's his dog, and that dog, you can't see it well in the picture, but the dog's looking up at Zach, because the dog
Oh,
doesn't do anything unless Zach, you know,
yeah.
says, "Let's go do this, let's go that." And that dog, he jumps out of planes with him. He's got goggles. That dog's badass.
I've heard about those dogs. Well, God bless your son, man. I'd be so proud. Uh,
Yeah.
But
Thanks again for joining us on another episode of What If You Could podcast. Please subscribe, like, share, and give us any feedback. We'd love to hear it. And remember, if you can dream it, you can do it. See you next time.